Schleiermacher thought he was defending Christianity because he said the reason that Christian churches have been so bloodthirsty, and I suppose he's thinking of the Roman church state in the past, is because they have been concerned with ideas and opinions. And if you get rid of ideas and opinions from religion and concentrate on what is real, the feelings, then you'll do away with persecution too. These are Schleiermacher's words. How unjustly do you reproach religion with loving persecution, with being malignant, with overturning society, and making blood flow like water? Blame those who corrupt religion, who flood it with an army of formulas and definitions and seek to cast it into the fetters of a so-called system. He says it's not religion's fault, it's those who have corrupted religion by introducing ideas and opinions into it. If they would simply concentrate on the feelings, which are the exclusive elements of religion, then we wouldn't have any persecution. It wouldn't matter whether you believe that Christ is the same substance with the Father or of a different substance with the Father. It wouldn't matter whether he is God incarnate, the second person incarnate, or whether he isn't. What you have to focus on is love. You have to focus on brotherhood. You have to focus on the feelings. You have to focus on awe, the religious feelings, the feeling, as Reinhardt described it, of smallness when you walk into a cathedral in Europe. They make you feel small. And that's the essence of religion, feeling small. Schleiermacher says it was a feeling of absolute dependence that is the essence of religion. It's not such a shallow thing as knowing that God is one, or that Jesus Christ is the second person of God come in the flesh, or that Christ died for the sins of his people. They can't get to the real reality. The real reality is the feeling of absolute dependence. And these other things are just ideas and opinions that people have killed each other over through the centuries, and they're the corruption of religion. They are not religion. Well, in addition to Schleiermacher, there's another fellow named Kierkegaard, a Danish philosopher of the early part of the 19th century. Nobody knew of Kierkegaard largely until the 20th century, when the existentialists and the neo-orthodox found him, and were very much influenced by his thought. Now, of course, Kierkegaard had some good qualities. Many of these men do. That's what makes them so dangerous. If you find a bottle and it's labeled strychnine, chances are you won't drink it. But introduce some into orange juice and you might. It's the mixture of truth and error that is so dangerous because it's so deceptive. One of the things that Kierkegaard thought not very highly of was the press. He says there's a far greater need for total abstaining societies which would not read newspapers than for ones which do not drink alcohol. He had a very low opinion of the newspapers of his time. He wrote, and I know some people might sympathize with this statement from Kierkegaard today, the lowest depth to which people can sink before God is defined by the word journalist. If I were a father and had a daughter who was seduced, I should not despair over her. I would hope for her salvation. But if I had a son who became a journalist and continued to be one for 5 years, I would give him up. Kierkegaard also wrote, it was intelligence and nothing else that had to be opposed. Presumably that is why I, who had the job, was armed with an immense intelligence. He's very modest too. Did you get that statement? It was intelligence and nothing else that had to be opposed. Presumably that is why I, who had the job, was armed with an immense intelligence. He's an intellectual who knows what he's about, and he's about to launch an attack on the intellect. In his concluding unscientific postscript, Kierkegaard, again, like Schleiermacher, although they never met, never read each other, comes down with an attack on ideas and doctrine. He says, Christianity protests every form of objectivity. It desires that the subject should be infinitely concerned about himself. It is subjectivity that Christianity is concerned with, and it is only in subjectivity that its truth exists. If it exists at all objectively, Christianity has absolutely no existence. This sounds very similar to turn away from all that is usually reckoned religion and fix your regard on your inward emotions and dispositions. It's the subjectivity that Kierkegaard comes up with. He says, however, that we have to understand something. Unlike Schleiermacher, Kierkegaard says we do need to understand some doctrines of Christianity. We need to understand them so we know that they're contradictory. That's the reason we need to understand them. And then we believe because they're contradictory. That's the reason we believe them. We believe them because they're contradictory. He wrote, "Can one learn from history anything about Christ? No. Why not? Because one can know nothing at all about Christ. He is the paradox, the object of faith existing only for faith. But all historical communication is communication of knowledge. Hence, from history, one can learn nothing about Christ." So we have a ahistorical Christ. Christ is a figment of Kierkegaard's imagination. At another point he wrote, "The object of faith is the reality of another, and the relationship is one of infinite interest." The reality of another. That's the object of faith, he says. The object of faith is not a doctrine, for then the relationship would be intellectual, and it would be of importance not to botch it, but to realize the maximum intellectual relationship. The object of faith is not a teacher with a doctrine. For when a teacher has a doctrine, the doctrine is eo ipso, more important than the teacher. And the relationship is again intellectual. And it again becomes important not to botch it, but to realize the maximum intellectual relationship. The object of faith, according to Kierkegaard, is the reality of the teacher, that the teacher really exists. That's the object of faith. The answer of faith is therefore unconditionally yes or no. For the answer of faith is not concerned as to whether a doctrine is true or not, nor with respect to a teacher whether his teaching is true or not. It is the answer to a question concerning a fact. Do you or do you not suppose that he really existed? And the answer, it must be noted, is with infinite passion. Christianity has no doctrine concerning the unity of the divine and the human. If Christianity were a doctrine, the relation to it would not be one of faith, for only an intellectual type of relationship can correspond to a doctrine. Christianity is therefore not a doctrine, but the fact that God has existed. Faith constitutes a sphere all by itself, and every misunderstanding of Christianity may at once be recognized by transforming it into a doctrine, transferring it to the sphere of the intellectual. Faith has nothing to do with the intellect. Christianity has nothing to do with doctrine. And he did have some good words for Roman Catholicism. Catholicism has a conception of the Christian ideal to become nothing in the world. Protestantism is worldliness from beginning to end. Now, these men have been terrifically influential in liberalism at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. Liberalism is a spiritual descendant of Schleiermacher, with his emphasis on the emotions and the feelings, and his elimination of doctrine.